So geographically, Egypt is in Africa, but because of geography, and when I mean geography, I mean specifically because of the massive thing right in the middle of Africa called the Sahara Desert, Egypt has been separate or has developed in a different sense until the year 600 up until today. So let's say 1400, 1500 years. That is the time frame in which Egypt has been Arab.
If Africa could move from Africa and get to Asia, get to Europe, go to the rest of the world, you need to prove to me why Egypt could not interact with its southern neighbor. So you cannot be the most advanced and just close up yourself and I will only interact with these people, I will not interact with the other people. It doesn't make any sense.
Like, this is where we are. This is the map of Africa. There are thousands of people living here and we're not interested.
Egyptians are the same like every other part of Africa. That is what I'm saying. But for the fact that you have an interaction with Sudan doesn't stop you from having interaction with the other people. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us in today's episode of the Obehi Podcast. I remain Obehi, your host here from Verona, Italy. So today I have the honor of having with me Sherifa. That is her name. And of course, who is she? What is she doing? And why is she doing what she's doing? Which is actually the question that we ask here often, because we talk about storytelling. We want to know the people behind the brand, behind what they are doing. And of course, who is better to talk about them than themselves? So Sherifa, thank you so much for being here. So tell the people.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So tell the people who you are. Let's try to learn from you.
So my name is Sherifa. I am Egyptian, currently living in Dubai. I've been living here for the past 5 years. My career has always been in education, done many things across the years, been on all different sides of education. I don't know if we're going to get into that today, but we can. Other outside of work, wow, I love traveling. Traveled a lot. I think I've been to like 40 countries so far.
Lovely.
Yeah, I've been trying to get some more.
Okay, that's good.
That's more to explore.
It is said that traveling is part of education. So you are in education, you are traveling, you are in the same place.
I think I agree with you. I think it was Ibn Battuta who said that traveling makes you a storyteller.
Absolutely. And
that if I remember the quote correctly, we might have to fact check that. I love traveling. I'm also a scuba diver. Love exploring life underwater as well. I speak English, Arabic, and Spanish. Spanish is a recent addition. Like, I've only been learning Spanish for almost 2 years now. I love working out as well. If I'm not out of the office, you will find me in the gym.
Wow, that's lovely.
Yeah,
that's lovely. There's a lot of things about you, a lot of interesting things about you. That is great. That is great. All right. So you tell me a bit about you growing up, Sherifa. Yeah. Tell me about that.
Okay. So I grew up in Cairo, Egypt. And if you and your followers know anything about Egypt, it's massive. Massive. It is the largest Arab country in terms of population, not geography or landscape. I think we've just passed 110 million. There's a lot of Egyptians. As a society, it is very stratified. And I was fortunate enough to be born into a particular social class where I had access to education. And so I went to an international school. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to university. I did 2 master's degrees. But growing up, it was always very apparent that the opportunities that I was fortunate enough to be born into was not the case for the majority of people from my country, which I think is something that can be shared. There's something that can be said about most societies around the world. or at least I hate this word, but what they call third world or developing countries. I hate the word, but it's used. It's in the literature, unfortunately. So grew up fortunate. I studied political science at university, which was fascinating to study. But when you grow up Arab and in the Middle East, and then the Arab Spring happens, when you are finishing university, politics is lovely to study, but to work is a whole other ball game. So originally, background was in politics, wanted to become an ambassador, but with political changes, that goal shifted. And so that's where education comes in. But yeah, ask me specific questions about growing up. What do you mean specifically?
You said it. That is what we are interested in. When we did the pre-interview, I told you that we just launch and we just follow you because story is very strange because sometimes it can have legs, hands, and it can walk. So we just follow it.
Okay, let's just follow.
All right. Now, Sherifa, I'm interested in learning more about your country. Okay, I'm in Africa. Egypt is in Africa. For most people who do not yet understand, because of course there are some people in Europe who think Egypt is not in Africa. So anyway, there is nothing we can do about that.
You would be surprised, my friend. Yeah. I have been on the receiving end of that.
Okay, that's interesting.
Wish I could say only once.
Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. I'm interested. We are here to talk story.
Okay. So Egypt is very interesting in the sense that it is unique on more than one level. Let me explain. So geographically, Egypt is in Africa, but because of geography, and when I mean geography, I mean specifically because of the massive thing right in the middle of Africa called the Sahara Desert, Egypt has been separate or has developed in a different sense than what comes to people's mind when they hear the word Africa. Typically everything south of the Sahara. And I'm not talking about color at all. I mean culturally, linguistically, if we look at countries south of the Sahara, they have been more in contact with each other and have been influenced by each other linguistically and culturally, while Egypt has been more closely affiliated with the Mediterranean.
Okay.
And later on with the Arab. Now, this is a tricky one.
Go on.
It depends.
We have time for it.
It depends if you call it the Arab. See, growing up, it was always, we were taught in school that it was Fath Masr. And the word in Arabic, Fath, basically means the opening of Egypt or the liberation of Egypt. And this is when it was around the year 630, 640 something, when Islam and Arabic came together hand in hand into Egypt. Because when we talk about the origins of Islam or the origins of the Arabic language and culture, we're talking about the Arabian Peninsula, essentially. Egypt, all of the countries of North Africa, Tunisia, Libya, and even part of the Levant, Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan, none of these countries were Arab. We were Arabized, and the majority of the country became Muslim with the arrival of the Arabs in 600 something. And that is why to this day, I personally know a lot of people who say they identify as Egyptian. They don't identify as Arab, which is not 100% accurate. It is more of a perception, because officially it is the Arab Republic of Egypt and Arabic is the official language. But to counter this, if you look at the timeline of Egyptian history, 7,000 years old, 7,000 years of civilization, of different languages, culture, all of it, until the year 600, up until today, so let's say 1,400, 1,500 years, that is the time frame in which Egypt has been Arab. But it is the thousands of years before that that supports the claim of people saying that, oh, we are Egyptian, not Arab.
Okay. You are an Egyptian, correct?
I am an Egyptian.
So when you say you are an Egyptian, are you referring to that thousands of years of history, or you are referring to the Arab? What do you mean by that?
Wow. Personally, wow, it's not one or the other, in my opinion. Again, it's growing up in the bridge between both, and I don't know if it's correct to see them as distinct, because yes, there is a large history, but it is not. It has not continued. Like compare, for instance, China. Go with me. I'll give you an example. So China, for example, another one of the ancient river valley civilizations, evolved around the Yellow and Yangtze rivers, more or less around the same time, where you have the pharaohs evolving around the Nile. The key difference is that Chinese civilization, language, culture has continued up until today. Like the written Chinese script that is in use in China today has developed from the original oracle bones script that they found in the Shang dynasty. I used to teach history, by the way, in case you're wondering why all of these little nerdy facts.
I'm so happy we are having this conversation. Go on.
Yeah. So Chinese civilization is continuous. So if you ask a Chinese person, they might not have this same conflict, if we can call it that big of a word. But in Egypt's case, we can only guess what if. We can only guess is, what if the Arabs had not arrived? Would Egyptian civilization still have continued? Most likely not, because Egypt has been invaded by everyone, way before the Arabs did. So with the collapse of ancient Egyptian civilization, first there were the Greeks, and then the Romans, and then the Byzantines, and then the Mamelukes, and then the Ottomans, then the Arabs, and then the Ottomans, and then the British, and then it was independence. And it is that cultural mix that makes it very confusing. Fun fact, I did a DNA test.
Okay.
I did an ancestry test. Okay. And I was not happy. I was surprised, actually.
What did you find?
Even though I 100% identify as Egyptian, I've lived there all my life up until I moved to Dubai 6 years ago. It's home. It will always be home. And regardless if I cannot say that I am, Pharaoh, or I'm descended from the pharaohs, but at the same time, I am. Like, when I go into a museum and I see a statue or a mummy or all that, there's a feeling, it's like, oh, grandpa, something like that, like, yeah, we did this. There's a feeling when you go to the pyramids and you cannot not feel proud. But at the same time, the values that I was taught growing up are Arab. The culture, the guidelines on how to live, all of it has come from Arab culture. You cannot distinguish them anymore. So that is how I have always identified, which is why I was very surprised when I did an ancestry test to find out that I am only 50% Egyptian. I am also, like, there's an Arab section. I am 20% Italian, which I don't know what came from. I don't know how that.
Buongiorno. Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah.
Go on.
I don't know how. I don't know. Of course, like, these things, you can never trust them 100%. Who knows? And there's a whole other ethical conversation that we can have about DNA ancestry, but separate point. So I discovered that I was 20% Italian. There's a bit of Turkish, but I knew that because I knew that, like, my grandma's family originally came from Turkey when we were under control of the Ottoman Empire. So that wasn't a surprise. There's a little bit of Moroccan. There's a little bit of East African, which was surprising as well. But yeah, so that was a surprising thing to me, honestly.
All right.
But I mean, it wouldn't be accurate to say I am Egyptian, not Arab.
So with me now that when you go to the museum, like you were saying, when you look at the mummy or you look at the artifacts or looking at the presents that are dating back to 5,000 years, you can't really say these are my ancestors. That is the question I'm asking you. Can you say that?
100%.
All right.
100%.
Okay.
And I can go on forever about the achievements of ancient Egyptian civilization and how there's so many things that still exist in the world that originated from this. For example, the idea of a king or a supreme ruler that is a way of governing that is still in place. So if you look at even constitutional monarchies nowadays, the idea of a supreme ruler that has the right to rule, that is originally an Egyptian concept.
So, but then you were also saying that when you were growing up, or I assume that is how the education is in the Middle East. Which, by the way, the Middle East, okay, we can say that is East Africa, because Africa will extend to Asia. Okay, then we probably can talk, have a lot of argument about what is the Middle East, what is the middle of what are we actually talking about, because somehow.
It is a very colonial term.
Okay. So that all the part that we call Saudi Arabia, all to that point until you get to India, because Africa actually have a handshake with Asia.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we can leave that beside. But what I'm sort of trying to understand now is that you were talking about the Arabic culture or Arabic way of life, Arabic value. I think that is how you put it. That is what you grew up with, which is now when we are comparing that, it will appear that they will have also another value, which might be Egyptian value. And at the point you said they both mix up at the end of the day. Is that correct?
They have merged at the end of the day. I'll explain.
Yeah.
And I'm going to generalize a little bit because in this sense, Egypt is not very different from what I would say are Middle Eastern, Arab, even Asian cultures. And here I would put Egypt in the same category as those countries versus what is called Western culture. For example, Egypt is a very family-oriented society. There are traditions and values in place. And it is, so for example, it is not as individualistic as some Western countries. And I am very aware that I am generalizing, which I don't like doing, but go with me for the sake of conversation. And let's assume that we're talking about the majority. So in Western cultures where you are 18, you are expected to move out and live your own life, that is not what happens in Egypt. Most people continue to live with their families until they get married, whether this is a male or female. Slowly, there's some nuances and some changes in the younger generation that is coming up more liberal. But for the majority, it's a very family-oriented place. Religious holidays play a big deal. You are expected to always stay in touch with your parents and take care of your parents. It's not like you just grow up and leave. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, sorry.
No, that was it.
Okay, it makes perfect sense. But only that, when you talk about that family value, talking about Egypt having a strong family-oriented value, that is something that is very common in Africa, actually, which is not even Western. So I was trying to see how we make Egyptian Western in this sense. But of course, again, when we talk about Egypt, of course, people that are listening, they understand that we are talking about Egypt as it is today, not Egypt 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, because that is completely different from the Egypt that we have today. I think Sherifa have also made that point clear, because this is a highly debated conversation. Of course, you know that, no? I remember, for example, I was interviewing an Egyptologist from the US, and then I was sort of wondering, because there is a lot of conversation going on now.
100%.
Yeah?
100%. No,
Okay,
I'm agreeing.
so I was asking her, so you are an expert on Egyptian history, and we even have an entire category in it in Western schools about Egypt.
Yeah.
Only that Egypt is connected to other part of Africa. For example, like the ancient Kemet is what you know as Egypt. So, okay, Egypt is the Western word for it, no? Actually, the original word is Kemet, no? Now,
Yeah.
Kemet and Sudan are just neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay, where I'm going to there is that there is really that no distinction, there is no distinction between what you know as the people of Egypt and the people of Sudan or the people of the rest of Africa. In the sense that when you go to Europe, you are in Italy, I'm in Italy, you want to move between the Italian border and the French border. There is no, okay, that politically speaking, there is a border in the sense that we say, okay, this is Italy, we put a flag. This is France, you put a flag, or Austria. But for the people that live in the border, there is no border. Because if the people can interact, they evolve together. They are the same people. When you speak Italian in the border between Italy and France, it is the border between Italy and France. They say that the people on the side of France understand the Italy that you are speaking about. If you are speaking, that is the Italy you are speaking within that area. They say it's true everywhere. What I'm saying by that it is impossible that we can have just one people that are called Egyptians, and on the other border, we have a completely different people. It is not humanly possible. Maybe you can help me understand that. So this is what the question I was asking my Egyptologist to explain. How can you have Egypt as so-called Western civilization, and you have the neighbor African civilization, whereas there is no natural barrier between them. They can literally walk across the country. That is not natural to explain. I don't know for you how it is simple to how you even say that.
Okay. Few things. Firstly, I don't claim to be an expert in Egyptian history at all. I wish I was. I'm not. I'm not an Egyptologist. I'm not even an expert. I'm passionate. I've read books, but I would not call myself an expert. Secondly, I did not mean that Egypt is more Western. What I meant was, and this is, I'm talking thousands of years ago now, is that Egypt, at the peak of its civilization, explored and expanded into the Mediterranean, interacting with the Phoenicians in Lebanon, interacting with the Minoans in Crete, with the ancient Greeks, with the Romans, with the Tunisians and Carthage. And there was much more trade and cultural exchange with those parts of the world than with civilizations south of the Sahara, purely because of geographical differences. That being said, Egypt has always interacted with its southern neighbors. It was at one point, Egypt and Sudan were one country up until the 60s, like on and off. And it was at one point, I think it was like the 18th dynasty, the kingdom of Kush from Sudan, that actually invaded and conquered Egypt and ruled ancient Egyptian civilization for a few days. And Sudan has lots of pyramids, so I completely agree. And Egypt was part of the trans-Saharan trade route that stretched from all the way to Timbuktu. So that being true, at one sense, at the same time, I wanted to go back to what you were saying about how Africa and African countries versus crossing the border from Italy to France. If African countries united in the same sense that the European Union did, this would be the most powerful union or continent in the world, unstoppable, just in terms of the resources that would be under control. I wish we lived to see that happen, but you and I both know why my country and your country and a lot of countries in Africa today are kept from becoming as powerful as the Western countries are. Borders are a construct. I completely agree with you. And we can talk forever about how the current borders of Africa have been drawn literally on a piece of paper, and European powers have decided that this is going to be mine, this is going to be yours. And we are still living in the effects of post-colonialism until today. So I wish we could get to the point where you cross one country and you cross the border and you immediately identify with the people right there. There are similarities. Probably our closest neighbor is Sudan. But I wish we did not see ourselves as I wish we saw ourselves as Africans the same way that Europeans see themselves as European. And I hope we live to see that. But as of today, it is not the majority of how most people view themselves. Would you agree?
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I really do. Of course, I agree with you that we are more divided and we are united today. But actually, I was just looking at the human interaction, no? Which is beyond the border. We might have the border, no? Just like, for example, between the United States and Mexico. Okay, the United States can say, okay, we have this physical border, the people will never interact. But that wall is going to be broken down because the people are bigger than the wall. The people want to interact. Yeah, this morning I was seeing a video of a US citizen, okay, of course, all the people there, I presume they are, who was a kind of activist supporter of Trump. We could even see him wearing the hat, Make America Great Again. He was like very angry that his wife, who is a Mexican, had been taken by ICE and had been deported to Mexico. He was very angry about that. So what I'm saying is that a human being know how to be able to interact. This is irrespective of what kind of thing we might put as a barrier. Because when we go now to see how human beings interact culturally, linguistically also, we can see that the people are able to interact beyond the border. Mm-hmm. Again, I would like you to respond to what you were saying before, that Egyptians didn't have much interaction with the rest of Africa, with the southern part of Egypt or southern part of the Sahara, as much as they have with the rest of the world. I think we will need more explanation on that. Because linguistically speaking, I am not an expert in that. We find a lot of correlation between the language that was spoken. I'm not talking of the Arabic spoken in Egypt. I'm talking of the ancient language spoken in Egypt and the ancient language spoken in Africa. I've done an episode here where somebody was making a very clean explanation of the unification of all traditions in Africa. In fact, I remember, for example, in 2015, I think, I did a documentary that I titled that Pan-Africanism, Testing Idea on Reality. So there was this particular artwork that I showed where you see Ramses II with his hands crossed like this. Of course, this is in Egypt, no? Ancient Egypt. Then I presented a similar one, but this one is in Benin, ancient city of Benin. So it is not possible for people to live and not interact because except even if there were a barrier, if Africa could move from Africa and get to Asia, get to Europe, go to the rest of the world, you need to prove to me why Egypt could not interact with its southern neighbor. What is the reason? Yeah, in fact, I get that. That is actually what I want you to explain. Historically speaking, what is the reason why they would not interact with a land that they don't need to climb a mountain or cross a river? They just need to walk into the land than maybe crossing the river, using canoe, using boat to move to the peninsula of Italy, for example, or go to Greece. Why would they decide to do that instead of just literally walking across and shaking hands with the people around there? That is the question.
Geography, because it is easier to get on a boat and spend a week on a boat and sail to Greece than to get on a camel and cross the Sahara Desert. But again, this is in the past. Nowadays, yes, the relationship has changed. And again, I really wish I was more of a historical expert. That documentary, however, does sound very, very interesting. And it is something that I would like to see. So please do send me the link.
Oh, definitely.
After this.
Definitely, I will send it to you. Anyway,
Mm,
we'll get it
But
to.
I,
Yeah, yeah. Please go on. Go
but
on.
but despite this, it is not something that I agree with, because at the end of the day, we do have more in common with our African neighbors than with people across the Mediterranean. But for some reason or the other, ancient Egyptians ventured north rather than south. This changed in the years afterwards. And with technology and more inventions in transportation, we ventured even further. And we have been more interactive with our African neighbors since then. I'm just talking about like what was known as ancient Egyptian civilization. It adapted more from the cultures. It was more interactive with the Mediterranean world. Not saying it was a good thing.
But I think that is very natural to say that Egyptians, ancient Egyptians, by the way, were interacting with the Mediterranean world. It's very natural because that is the neighborhood.
Exactly.
But there is nothing stopping there from interacting with the people that are on their southern border. That is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we need to see that okay, people are having a construction of today that we are a square. This is all we know. This is all we must understand. But that is not how the ancient world saw it. In the time of Rome, there were black people operating inside the Roman Empire. People didn't know that because today we have a different construction of looking at reality. The Egyptian, the ancient Greek, they came to Egypt to study, to learn, because Egypt was the highest civilization that exists in the world. It was the biggest, most advanced in the world. So you cannot be the most advanced and just close up yourself and I will only interact with these people, I will not interact with the other people. It doesn't make any sense. And somebody is saying, okay, let's concentrate on the pyramid in Giza because that is where you have. But I'm telling them there are more pyramids in Sudan than in Egypt. There are more pyramids in Sudan than in Egypt. If pyramid is what you are looking for, you can even go further. You will see pyramid in Nigeria. Of course, not the size that you have in Egypt. Again, this is saying that these people have been interacting. We cannot stop people from interacting. It just doesn't make any sense that Egyptians wouldn't make any trip to the Congo. It doesn't make any sense. There is no reason why they shouldn't do that. Anyway,
But
yeah.
something about that, okay. I am not 100% sure that it was a decision. Because, let me explain. It is not like, and again, I'm generalizing, I'm putting myself in the minds of somebody who lived thousands of years ago, which is not an accurate thing, but let's assume. We can't assume that the people living in ancient Egypt at that time knew about Congo and South Africa and Nigeria. Yes, they knew there was land, but it is more likely that 7,000 years ago, it was a massive expanse of desert. And I'm talking about like the physical border. And they decided this is where our land stops. I don't think it is like they knew that there were thousands of people living there and they made the decision not to interact with them, if that makes sense. I think that we right now having this conversation in 2026 have the advantage of knowing the world, and we have the advantage of looking back in time and making those judgments. But I'm not sure it's accurate to say that they knew, like, this is where we are, this is the map of Africa, there are thousands of people living here and we're not interested.
That is an interesting point again to raise. But that even needs a bit of criticism in the
Please
sense
go ahead.
that because Africa is quite unique in the sense that you can literally walk from South Africa to Cairo, from Cape Town to Cairo, without ever crossing a boat. So it would be impossible for any part of Africa, whether you are living in the east or the west, to just not walk to explore what is available in the other part. But this is what the linguistics are explaining. You know, there is something very peculiar about human culture and linguistics. You know, there are always living traces around. People are always forming and disintegrating, reforming, regrouping, and disintegrating. That is how we evolve as a people. I think, it is evidently clear that Egypt, based on evidence that we have been the highest form of civilization in Africa. But this is what I say. That is not where it started.
No, of course not. Not how it ended.
So what I'm saying, in essence,
Like
is
that
that
was the peak.
yeah,
That was the peak. We cannot make that conclusion about Egypt now.
yeah. So in essence, what I'm saying is that the people that we know as Egyptians, even today, we have the people that came from the other parts of the world that occupy Egypt. We still interact. If we can interact, then our ancestors definitely interacted. Because they were also explored. They had different challenges. Of course, they couldn't find all the solutions just where they are. They have to move. It's natural for them to move. They move away. Humanity was living only in Africa. They had to move from there to other parts of the world, to Asia, to America. Of course, they didn't enter Europe at the time because Europe was too cold. Not because something was inhibiting them, something was stopping them. Human beings have no barrier. There was nothing stopping ancient Africa from walking into Europe. But it was just too cold. So that is why Europe is the last land to be occupied by human beings. That is the only reason. So if we can,
you have a point.
Go on.
No, you have a point, and I agree with you because yes, we do know humanity began in East Africa, and the Sahara must have been crossed for the first people to settle in Egypt back when all humans were hunter-gatherers, and then into West Africa and all of that, and then into Asia, of course. And walking and exploring is part of it. So I agree with you. Yes, the Sahara was crossed on land. That's how the first humans went into Egypt.
Many times over. Today they still cross.
I agree with you. But at the same time, then
go on.
Why was Egypt more influenced and more interactive with other cultures in the Mediterranean?
Yeah, that is perfectly
the fact
fine.
is it was.
The
fact is it was. Yes, there was interaction with countries in South Africa, but in terms of evidence, in terms of cultural interactions, there's more evidence of Egyptians going to Greece and Rome and vice versa. There's a Greek community that lived, and by the way, still lives. There's still a massive Greek community that lives in Alexandria. There's evidence of trade. There's evidence of interactions more with the Mediterranean.
No, I can't even argue that at all, because of course the only thing I'm saying is that Egyptians have no reason not to interact with the other people in the southern border. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they didn't interact with the rest people in the Mediterranean. Of course they need to, because that is where they live. It's just like saying, just because I know you, I cannot know somebody else. Mm-hmm. Of course, I also know somebody else. There are people around me. I cannot say, oh, I only know the people from here forward. The people from this side, I didn't have any interaction. Because, this is why I'm saying this, is that there is a construct within Western understanding of this history that Egyptian is different from Africa. That is what I'm saying. Egyptians are not different from the rest of Africans. Egyptians are the same like every other part of Africa. That is what I'm saying. But for the fact that you have an interaction with Sudan doesn't stop you from having interaction with the other people.
No, we're on the same page. No, we're on the same page. And if you look at the history, like if we leave ancient civilization aside, leave it aside for now. But if we look at the history of Egypt since then, let's say in the last 1500 years, 100% it has more in common with African history than with European. We were colonized, resources taken, still living in the effects of post-colonialism, and culturally as well, like we were saying in the beginning, the family values, the belief in traditions, the traditional, little bit more conservative side, that is 100% more in common with Africa than with countries. Because since leaving, so this is why I want to leave the ancient civilizations aside, but I want to look at what has happened since then. And Egypt is at the crossroads. It is in Africa, so it shares a lot of things in common with the rest of the countries in Africa. It is in the center of the Middle East, so it also shares lots of things with other neighboring Arab countries, for sure. And the differences between Egypt and what was Mediterranean is now Western. That gap has grown much, much, much bigger.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. There is not even any reason to debate that at all, because that should be obvious. That should be obvious, though, because people, of course, they move based on what is next to them. There are more people in Europe that are closer to Egypt that are so part of Africa, because Africa is not a small piece of land. It's a huge mega land. So if you were to be walking or taking a flight, you would travel from Egypt and get to many parts of Europe before you would travel from Egypt and get to other parts of Africa. So
yes,
that is understandable. That is clear. All right.
But I have a question for you now.
Yeah, go on.
Because you were saying that some people don't see Egypt as part of Africa.
Yeah.
Which we've both established that it doesn't make sense. We both disagree with this. But I am curious in that argument. Like people who say that, why? Based on what?
It's based on nothing more than on distraction. Nothing more than, of course, you understand that the pseudoscience or pseudoscientific approach that have been adopted by the European for the purpose of taking away humanity on the African people. Of course, on any other people that they could, that they want to exploit. This is the modus operandi of the European, Euro-Western society. It happened to Africa. It happened to Native American. It happened to also the Aborigine of Australia. If the European, as human being, wanted to interact with other human beings as co-human, they will go to Australia and negotiate with them, talk with them, and cohabit with them. Instead, they simply take away the humanity. By the time you take away somebody's humanity, then it is justifiable to do anything you can do to them. So the purpose of detaching Egypt from the rest of Africa is because there are so many, they couldn't hide the evidence of the civilization in Egypt, but this couldn't be part of Africa, because if we assume or if we accept that these people are advanced, therefore we cannot justify how to exploit them. Therefore, let's hide part of it that we can, the part that we can rewrite, let's rewrite it. The other part, there is nothing there. So outside of Egypt, there is no history in Africa. I don't even need to be telling you that, because you're a historian, you should have gotten these notices, gotten a memo from many European scholars who said that I don't even know this other Egypt. Okay, outside of Egypt, on the southern part of it, no history exists there. And these are people that they didn't look at the ancient Zimbabwe, the ancient ruins of Zimbabwe. When they got it, they would say, oh, these were created by people that came from somewhere other than African people. When they get to ancient city of Benin, they saw the world become one of the wonders of the world. They said, no, these are the lost Atlantics. These are not Africans. It's the same narrative. It's the same, purely the same. Saying that the builder of the pyramid are alien. It's the same way of detaching this, that Africa couldn't do this. And it's the same thing that when you see somebody that is in Tunisia or in Morocco or in Algeria or in Egypt, who have this mentality that we are not here, we are not part here, we belong somewhere. If you belong somewhere, they cut your part of the land and go somewhere. It is not possible. You are African if you live in Africa. And of course, you said, based on your research, based on your study, even though your ancestor might not have been 100% Egyptian, but you know, when you study ancient Egypt, what have been the story? What have been on the ground here? So it is intentional. The idea that Egypt should not be part of Africa is intentional. It is not based on evidence. It is not based on something that you can prove. It cannot prove that.
The concept that Africans could not have made this is something that, I've been on the receptive side of. And I'll tell you a personal story, but let's get back to what you were saying. And to add to Zimbabwe and Benin, Ethiopia as well. And there was a whole other narrative that this was coming from Jerusalem who built this because it was incomprehensible that Africans built this. And that plays into power because when you instill a narrative like that, it makes it easy to justify and rule people because they cannot rule themselves. They are not capable of doing something amazing, which is not true, which is 100% not true. But Egypt, by the way, and like you said, has been on the receiving side of it. It's just that the evidence, like you said, is harder to hide. It's like the pyramids are right there. So how can you say they were not built? But they get around it. The theories of aliens and the theories of Israelis and Jews building the pyramids. Now that one really pisses me off. Really pisses me off. That one, because the Israelites were not even there. The the pyramids are way older than Judaism and Moses, number one. So that is also a narrative to control. There was something else that I wanted to tell you. Oh, the fact that that when this is something also that people try to say is that the pyramids were built by slaves. Pyramids were not built by slaves. Pyramids were built by paid workers, and we have found evidence of living communities and stores and houses and markets, and they lived with their families and they were paid construction workers. That is not how slaves lived. So I understand what you're saying, and it is very unfortunate that, like, you are right. And it would make sense from a political power perspective as well, why some people now, I understand, would like to distance Egypt from Africa, because it helps subjugate an entire continent to say that, oh, you are not able to do anything like this. And unfortunately, it is that image and that stereotype that still exists, still pertains. Let me give you an example. And this is a personal story. So I am a university careers counselor. I work in an international school in Dubai. And part of my role is I have to network a lot. So I network with counselors in other schools, and Dubai is very international, so it's from everywhere. I have to network with industries so that I can help expose my students to different kinds of industries and help get them internships and work placement. And I have to network a lot with universities. I enjoy it. It's actually part of the job that I enjoy, even though, believe it or not, I'm a massive introvert. I don't know if it shows, but it gets me out of my comfort zone, which I enjoy. So part of my job is I meet people from all over the world, all over the world. I was just at a conference in Switzerland, November. We were invited by hospitality schools there in order to view them, see them, and see if they would be a best fit for our students. And fun fact, I met some lovely ladies from Zimbabwe who I am still in touch with and who have invited me to come. And they're like, you have to come and see Zimbabwe. But so network a lot. The story. When I say that I am Egyptian, there is always there's always a surprise. And then depending on who you are talking to, there is either a follow-up question or not, or they pause. But the 8 times out of 10, there's there's a surprise. It's like, wow, you're Egyptian. How interesting that you speak fluent English, that you are well-spoken and well-educated, and that you have this job. Some people leave it at that. Some people always ask a follow-up question, and you'd be surprised at the number of times I've received this. Like, so many times I've had to come up with an answer just so it's right. So the follow-up question is always, so there's always and then there's, okay, but Egyptian and I'm like, I know where they're going, but I say, and what? What do you mean? I know what they mean, but I ask them, what do you mean? Because I want them to say it out loud. They're like, okay, so like you're Egyptian American, Egyptian Canadian, And I'm like, no, I'm just Egyptian. Some people leave it at that. Some go further. And they say, okay, but like you must have lived abroad your entire life. Or you must have been educated abroad. Because it is inconceivable that someone who is from Egypt, who looks like I do, can be good at their job and can reach the position that they are in without any kind of Western influence. Like, you just did this and you are in this position and you are in this good at your job and you are this well spoken and intelligent and articulate when you are just from Egypt. Like, there's no Western influence. Yeah, they leave that.
Unfortunately.
and it says a lot. It says a lot about the conception of Egypt in their brains. So because I'm Egyptian, I am expected to speak broken English. I am not expected to be an opinionated woman. I'm not expected to be well spoken. And I am not expected to be able to articulate myself and present myself very well in English or able to network. But here's the spoiler alert: we're sitting at the same table without the same starting point, without the same access to resources. And yet here I am. And so my response to this is, and some people take it further and they're like, but you speak such good English. And I'm like, yeah, it's centuries of colonialism and Eurocentric education. And that's usually when they think that maybe I should not have said that.
Then you finally caught that off.
Yeah, and I say it with a smile. It's like, yeah, colonialism. And then they're like, oh, maybe I generalized. Maybe I shouldn't have assumed. They don't say that part. They don't say that part. But just relating to what you said, that image still lives. And I'm sure that as an African man living in Europe, you have been on the receiving side of it as well.
Absolutely.
And it's disgusting.
This is why we're here. This is why we're here, to reclaim our history, to see it the way we see it, to be the master of our narrative. We don't expect anybody to come and tell our story for us. I am an African. I know that. I don't need any person to define me based on their myopic and half-baked understanding of what a human being should be. I have no need for that. I can tell you who I am.
You said it right. It is their idea or their perception of what a human being should be, should look like, should act like, what kind of values that they have. And if you as an African man, or me as an African Arab woman, Egyptian, whatever, if we challenge the boxes that we have been put into, it is met with surprise. And that is so wrong. Like, why are you not behaving the way you are expected to, or the way we were taught you would behave? Why are you different from the image that I had in my mind of you?
That is what we are supposed to do, to trouble the water.
100%.
You see, even the whole concept, the whole idea that the alien, okay, I don't know why I'm going there again, that the alien built the pyramid, it doesn't scientifically make any sense. Why? Because the elements that is needed to build the pyramid are found in Egypt, are found in the neighborhood, are found here. Those are not the elements that are coming from outside of this world, because this is built on the physics of the law that is here. So alien doesn't live in a house, because house is what we build. We are human beings. We need a house. Alien doesn't need a house.
It is, but here's the very weird thing, that for some people, that makes more sense than an African Egyptian civilization mastering engineering and physics. Like, how does that make more sense?
All right. We will really leave that for another day, because we'll come back for it. And like I said, we are not in haste. This is our heritage, and we're ready to reclaim it. You are in education. This is really, you know what we'll do? We'll come back to this conversation of education. I love it. Is we're supposed to talk about that, but I don't know for some reason. Anyway, this is everything is okay because I told you, let's just follow the story.
Yeah,
I will
and like the story has flows.
So tell me about what you do within education. Why are you so passionate about that? Because you'll be there for a long time. I don't need to be told that you are passionate about it.
There was a Brazilian educator called Paulo Freire who wrote a very powerful book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
We talked about it not too long ago in this podcast, but go on.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Education has the power to liberate. I'll give you another quote, and this one will sum up why. What if the cure to cancer was inside the brain of someone who could not afford an education? Hmm. So two things right there. But the second quote has more to access, and that's a whole other thing. And I think education is a right. It's not a privilege. It should not be. It's a right. So, but that is a whole other thing. Pedagogy of the oppressed relates to what you and I were talking about. And it is unlearning a lot of what we are taught. Education is beautiful. Like learning is beautiful. Let me correct that. Learning is beautiful, and it's human nature. It's human nature for us to want to develop ourselves, to want to learn more. It is this beautiful thing inside our head that distinguishes us from anything else alive on this planet. That being said, it does need to be said that the education systems in place are fundamentally wrong and do not cater to empowerment. I have tried in my career to change that. And even if it's letting one or more students open their mind and think about things differently, and think about how the systems of control in place are meant to control them. Even if they get to think about outside of the box, then we have done something right. Throughout the years, I started out as a history teacher. I taught sociology, I taught philosophy, I taught Middle Eastern studies, I taught global politics, global studies, all of it. Nowadays, I am still in the education system, but I am trying to make change outside of the classroom. And what I do is, my official title is, yes, University Careers Guidance Counselor. Amazing. But I also see that there is something fundamentally wrong with how other people do my job. A lot of the time that University Careers Counseling is information giving. It's like, there's this university, there's this major, there's this is what you can do after school. And it's about finding best fit. What I try to do is I try in an existentialist philosophical view to university careers counseling. What I do is I work with my students on life design. I try to get them to identify certain values that resonate with them. I try to get them to think about the facts in their lives. Like, what is constraining you? And how can you make authentic choices to give your life meaning? So you can choose to design your life in a way that is meaningful for you. Even if that comes down to, let's say a student wants to become a doctor. Amazing. Come to that conclusion because it aligns with your values, with making a meaningful choice on what you want to do with your life. Not because mommy and daddy told you need to become a doctor.
Sherifa, I have so many questions to ask you about education. And
Yeah.
I want us to do that separately. So we're going to come back to the conversation, an entire episode on that, because education is fundamentally important, like you said. And so we're going to treat it as a topic in its own right. We're coming back to it. So to conclude this conversation, tell the people how they can find you, those who want to connect with you.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's how you found me. I respond. I'm open to collaborations. Your podcast is something I'm interested in. It's a topic. I'm very passionate about. Please do find me. I know you're gonna write my name at same spelling, Sherifa Amin on LinkedIn. Please reach out to me. Let's talk. Let's connect. If you have a similar story, anything, gladly.
Thank you so much, Sherifa. I thank you to all of you that have listened to the end of this conversation. As you can see, there will be a lot of passion here because Sherifa is passionate about this conversation, and me too. Education, of course, that is what we have talked about, but talked about it in a different way. We talk about the information, the perception that people have about Africa, Egyptians, the connection that we have, or the thing that we don't have. No, but anyway, we say thank you so much for being here. I know that you do have something to say about what we shared here. If there is any, please let us know. Let us know in the comment section. Let's have this conversation. Let's turn it on. Let's turn the heat on. Because this is our heritage and we're going to reclaim it. So thank you for being here. And make sure you subscribe to this channel and share also with your friends who might need it. Sherifa, it has been a pleasure here.
Thank you so much. Okay, it's been a pleasure.